Good morning to everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on online learning in education. We are thrilled to have with us such a diverse audience, including a number of international delegates, our own esteemed academics, and our students. Your participation in this webinar reflects the growing importance of online education in shaping the future of learning. A very special welcome to Professor Sue Gregory, who is our distinguished speaker from the University of New England, Australia. We hope that all of you attending the session today find it insightful and engaging. A brief introduction to Prof. Prof. Sue Gregory is the head of School of Education at the University of New England in Australia, leading strategic initiatives and fostering partnerships with industry and accreditation bodies. With expertise in ICT in education, she has led numerous national and university projects, securing over $6 million in funding and publishing over 200 works on virtual worlds and online learning. Prof is also a leader in the Australian and New Zealand Virtual Worlds Working Group, while being a life member of ASILITE. So Prof, I invite you to share with us your presentation for today, and to all the colleagues and students who are attending. As Prof is sharing her presentation with us, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add these into the chat, and we will attend to them post her presentation. Thank you very much, Prof, on behalf of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and in particular the School of MIG. We welcome your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today. As mentioned, I'm Sue Gregory, and I just a tradition that we have in Australia, we acknowledge country. You welcome country if you are an Australian Indigenous person, but I am not, so I acknowledge country. So from the University of New England, I respect and acknowledge that its people, courses, facilities, and are built on land and surrounded by a sense of belonging, both ancient and contemporary, of the world's oldest living culture. In doing so, UNE values respects Indigenous knowledge systems as a vital knowledge of the capital of Australia. Knowledge capital of Australia. Today I'm sitting on the lands of Gomeroi, Ngunguni, Anawan and Dargadi peoples. So welcome, thank you, and I will now share my slides. And so if anyone can't see this, please let me know. Just put it in chat, but anyway. So I'm talking about online, you can, excellent. I'm talking today about learning online. And so I'm going to give you a bit of context about myself, my university, and a little bit about Australia, a bit about the world, and a bit about online learning. Okay, so that's myself and my avatar, but she's almost hardly ever used now, but I'd still like to add her, and her name is Jess. And you'll find out more about Jess later. Okay, so this is where the University of New England is. We are in Australia, and you are way over here in South Africa. And so the University of New England is in Armidale. We are a city, but we are a city of about 25,000 people. We are a city because we have cathedrals in our city. We are halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. They're probably two cities you've heard of, and we're 200 kilometres from the coast, the east coast, and we're 1,000 metres up. So we're on top of the Great Dividing Range. So it's quite cool, although today was reasonably warm. Okay, so that's us. Context, we're probably similar to you in temperature because we're just across the ocean from each other. So the University of New England, it was established in the 1930s as a college of the University of Sydney. In 1954, we became the University of New England, and we started distance education in 1956, so it's been going a long time. In 2007, we began online teaching because by then the internet, etc., had been invented. And we are celebrating our 70th year this year as being a university. So the University of New England, you can see we've been teaching online for almost 20 years. And on the right-hand side, you can see that attendance mode at the University of New England across the university, the top graph, is 16% on campus and 84% online. And in my school, we are 94% online and 6% on campus. So that's a very small on-campus cohort. So we had to learn how to teach online for a very long time. Our vice chancellors have guided us down that way when I started. Oh, well, I'll come back to that in a minute. So this is a bit of information about universities across Australia. So before 2020, enrolment was mostly on campus. And after the pandemic in 2020, 2021, we saw that enrolments in universities in Australia were up to 48% online. Now, that graph on the right shows enrolments in Australian universities. Now, we are a small country, 16 million people, and you can see that in 2022, you know, our enrolments in universities are going down. So COVID did a little bit of people reevaluating their lives during and after the pandemic, like, do they really want to learn to get educated at universities? Anyway, which is interesting. We saw 2019 huge enrolments, 2020 during the pandemic. I think people being in lockdown, they enrolled in university courses, and then they slowly declined. And so in Australia, and I think this is worldwide, I am unsure about for you, but we have a huge teaching crisis as we don't have enough educators in our early childhood, primary and secondary schools, which is a huge problem. So university-wide online statistics. So the e-learning market or online market is projected to grow from 315 billion in 2021 to 1 trillion in another couple of years, another 4 years. So that is just huge. There are over 220 million registered MOOCs, massive open online courses across the globe. Online classes were 87% less energy consumption, so they're very good in the environmental sense. In 2016, 21 million students accessed online learning, and this had increased to 92 million in 2021. And gamification, they predict in 2021, $86 billion was spent on gamification, and they expect by 2030 it'll be 11.66 billion. I remember in the 90s when I became familiar with the internet, and I was making web pages for people and things like that, and I thought, I know everything about the internet. And not very long later, I realised how very wrong I was, and I will never, ever know everything there is to know about the internet. So some statistics for online learning in the USA. So they have approximately 10 million college students on learning from distance education courses, and that's 54% of their students took up distance education in 2022. But that was down 75% from 2020, which is interesting. They enroll about 1.1 million students, and African Americans make up 23.3% of students versus 12.5% of college students. And out-of-state tuition rates are significantly cheaper for online public colleges. And the e-learning market is huge. The growth is huge. And I just wanted to put some American or USA statistics in there because they are a big country and they are very dominant in the online learning space. So a little bit about me. So I started after about 15 years as an educator. I was teaching people how to use computers to use in their career, in their teaching, or even in their workplace. I got a job here at the University of New England in 2006. I was casual and fixed term, and 2011 I became permanent. 2013 I got my doctorate and I became a senior lecturer. In 2015 I was chair of research and promoted to associate professor in 2017. 2018 I became head of school, and in 2019 I was promoted to professor. So that's a little bit about me, and that's UNE celebrating 70 years. Okay, so today I want to talk about what is online learning, the importance of online learning, technologies and tools commonly used in online learning, advantages and challenges, how they could enhance their education or your education, depending on which context you're coming from. Can online learning be improved and be better than traditional education? Future of online learning, conclusions and summary and key takeaways. So hopefully I'll just delve into each of them just a little bit. Okay, so way back when I started my first lecture, I found this little book or slide deck actually back then by Ruth Clark and Anne Quinn, and it still resonates with me today. So you see the blue column and the green column. So the green part of this graph is words only, and the blue is narrated, animation, text and graphs. And what Clark and Quinn say is learning is better from words and pictures than from words alone. So people absorb what's happening if you have words and pictures as opposed to words. So a big mistake for online learning is to convert all your text into PDFs, downloadable documents that people have to read. People learn in a variety of ways, and we need to enable them to have that variety of ways of learning. Okay, so what does online learning look like? So it could look like this, where there's someone out the front and you've actually got a computer. You're actually doing a little bit of hybrid learning there. You're learning on a computer and you have your facilitator or teacher out the front. So again, here we've got individuals on desks in a library, and then there's an individual who's learning online. So online learning can be in many formats. It can be a big classroom, a small one where you're actually in the same room, or by yourself. So there are a variety of ways to learn online. And so this is just a few of them. So this is how online learning is being used in universities, in what area. So there's quite a few there. Doesn't cover them all. This is just a little sample of the areas that use online education. So some examples of online learning. So this is a whole list of different things. I'm not going to go over them all. I'm going to delve into a couple of them, not many. But so a lot of people, blogs and wikis back in the early 2000s, that's Facebook also, podcasts, audio books, YouTube. YouTube, you can get the TEDx, the Khan Academy, a huge amount of great videos are online, great educational ones. MOOCs I've already mentioned earlier. So video conferencing and webinars, so you can go into Teams, WebEx, Zoom. There's a lot of places, tech or resources that have been created. And COVID was just amazing for Zoom, because their clientele went up dramatically. And then there's things that simulations and gamification, virtual reality and augmented reality. Soft skills, they're things that you still have to learn online: communication, teamwork, blockchain, credentialing, etc. Okay, so cut some of the pros and cons. So Some of the positives, flexibility and convenience. So the demographics of our students at UNE who study education are typically, not all of them, typically someone around 35 years of age. They have children, they work, and they're studying online from somewhere around the world, mostly in Australia, and they do it in their own time at their own pace. So it's interesting. I started at UNE right at the end of only offering on campus and right at the beginning of online. And it was really interesting, the comments that came about for all those people who were in remote areas of Australia or New South Wales, and how they just loved the ability to interact with their peers. Self-paced, accessibility. Accessibility doesn't mean, well, it can mean a lot of things. So I do remember our students finding it very difficult to get online. And so we had to ensure that there were ways that they could access their learning materials if they couldn't get online. And there were some courses that we taught that our students had, if they ticked that they had online access, this is early 2000s, they had to be able to get in and into the internet and learn. If they couldn't, we would be encouraging them to find another course to enrol in, or unit, we call them, where it was paper-based. So they, online learning, there are so many resources. It's unbelievable what is available to teach online. It's very cost effective. I've already mentioned that earlier. Much, much cheaper to teach online than to have bricks and mortar. And it can help with developing technical skills. But things that aren't so great is the lack of face-to-face. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can get over that a bit later. Self-discipline and motivational challenges. I know I have one child, he has to have face-to-face. And unfortunately, he was studying during COVID and he had to learn from home. He didn't like that at all. He really, really needed that ability to go in and talk to his lecturers and his peers. There can be technical issues, and I've found right from the very start, don't try to be too clever with technology, because sometimes it doesn't work for you. And, you know, you don't want to have things that don't work. So limited hands-on experience. So, for example, if you were learning medicine, nursing, even physical education. Physical education we teach online here at UNE, but I remember when they changed to that, it was very, very hard for our lecturers to think of how to engage our students and teach them online. Perceptions and credibility, I think, are improving now that most universities have tried online teaching because of COVID, that their perception of it is, oh, actually it's okay. It isn't easy to do. You do have to work at it. And sometimes the networking opportunities are not there. So, for example, if you had an online conference, you don't get to meet your peers. You just go along and listen to the sessions. And they can be engaging, but they're not as good as face-to-face. Okay, so why would anyone want to learn online? Okay, so why learn online? So it's an effective way, as I just said. You can build up social networks and communities, but you've got to do it smartly. So, for example, I'm here talking to you. There are about 50 of you online, and I can't see any of you. Now, if I was conducting a lecture or a tutorial with my students, I would make sure I could see everyone. No one could turn off their cameras, because I find that's actually rude. It means that you're not engaging. So you can actually engage with students using Zoom and many other online resources. Synchronous. So that is such a huge thing with being able to do synchronous activities with students. So you can have like this synchronous, we're on here together. But then also you can record it for those people that can't come online, and they can have a look at the video of your lecture, your workshop, whatever, in their own time. Now, they don't get to talk to their peers, they don't get to talk to their lecturer, but they do get to learn. You have immediate and contextualised feedback, so you can get that face-to-face, but typically in a face-to-face, you have to book a meeting with someone and go to their office and go and have a chat to them. Whereas online, if it's something like this, you can put something in chat and it can be discussed, resolved straight away. And then you can enhance and support one-to-one, student to student, academic student. You can create all those different learning scenarios. Okay, so for the barriers, there are several strategies for eliminating barriers for online learning. And these, so accessibility and flexibility, so anytime, anywhere learning, and I've already mentioned that, but it's the one thing I've found is that it's a great environment for those people with disabilities. So it is inclusive for them. And one thing that I have often found with people who have a disability is that they're put on a level playing field in an online environment. So people don't judge them for whatever disability they have. They're a person. Other people don't know their disability, and you know, as much as people attempt not to show their biases, they sometimes do, and that can be terrible for someone with a disability. So an online environment is perfect for them. And it also, if they're a bit slower at doing something, it enables them that time. If they've got a disability that, you know, they're wheelchair bound or whatever, they don't have to find the way to get to their classroom, etc. Asynchronous learning. So as I said, you can have everything recorded. You can go in there, do everything at your own time. Cost effective. So there are a lot of free resources when you learn online. You probably don't have to go and buy the textbook anymore because it's online. So there's a lot of different resources, the diverse learning resources, multimedia content, and global collaboration. So when I talk about a bit of the work I used to do, but I used to invite lecturers in from all around the world to talk to my students. So we would meet every Wednesday evening at 7:30 p.m, which is about this time that I'm in now. And I would invite the best people who are doing the research or the teaching in an area. Obviously, they don't all say yes, but to come along and talk to our students. So our students have the best people in the world to listen to them because people love to help. So there's global collaboration there. And it also helps if you are researching how to get to know people. And then you can adapt your materials and provide personalised learning. So you can enable students to learn in the way they need to learn. And, you know, for me, I would want to watch videos. I'd want to do things. I want to read. Actually, I want to listen. I want to do it all. But there's some people that they just want to read, or they need to watch a video. I know when my son he's now in his 30s, was doing some of the science subjects for his high school, the last couple of years of his schooling, and he used to go into the Khan Academy videos to learn how to do some of the scientific things which he wasn't getting from school. So, you know, that's fantastic. They're access to so many more resources. And it does make you think that, you know, do we need universities? I know that's a discussion that's happening. I definitely think we need universities, but there are some people that don't. They think that all the stuff is there available. Inclusivity, supporting the diverse learners, and languages. So that's another one. If there is a language barrier, or if someone doesn't speak the same language as you, there's the translators online that, you know, you can have a conversation and actually mostly understand what they're talking about. Then you can replace the traditional classrooms. So flipped classrooms, flipping it over to the students, the MOOCs, the really short, succinct courses, micro-credentialing and getting the online certificates, virtual reality and augmented reality. So I'm going to talk about augmented reality a bit later. But anyway, the two differences in the virtual reality and the augmented reality. So the one uses real life and you can manipulate, that's the augmented reality, and the other one, sorry, the virtual reality, and the augmented reality is you go into a space and you have to use the tools that they provide you. You don't have any say in it. That's a bit like a game on a computer or whatever. So there is a bit of a digital divide, so a limitation on online learning or online education. So the lack of hands-on experience, but the other one is that someone may not have access to a computer, the internet, and so they actually just cannot learn online. So they have to have that face-to-face. And then the isolation factor for learning face-to-face, you know, you're not isolated, being disciplined, challenges, cheating and academic integrity. So I'm going to talk about that a bit later. And limited feedback. I actually think online you get a lot more feedback than you would in a face-to-face. People are much more comfortable giving the real proper feedback on a written way or an audio or a video than they are face-to-face, especially if the feedback is not so positive. And then I've already talked about quality and credibility. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my research and what I learned and how engaging it was. So this is Jess, my avatar, and she's been alive since 2007. And her real name now is Sue Gregory. So way back when I invented her, I couldn't get Sue Gregory, but she's been able to have a name change. And so when I started out in academia, they said, if you want a job, you've got to get your doctorate, you've got to get your PhD. And I'm going, I don't want my PhD. And they go, well, if you want a job, you've got to get it. And I said, all right. So I taught ICT, Information Communication Technology, how to use computer resources in a classroom. That was my job. And this is when we were starting to teach online, and wikis, blogs were about, and I thought, oh, I'll do a PhD on wikis and blogs and how we can use them in our teaching. And then someone said, well, you're working full-time, Sue, you've got 3 kids, et cetera, so you'll be a part-time student. That'll take you 6 years to do your PhD. Do you think wikis and blogs will engage you for that long? And I'm going, no. I didn't find them very exciting anyway. So they said, well, how about looking at virtual worlds? And I had no idea what they were talking about. So I went in and learned, and I started creating spaces for students. And by 2008, I had my own units, courses, or, you know, subjects to teach. I had about 4 of them to teach in my online space. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the feedback of that. But the funny thing about it is that I got quite a few grants from to develop these, which was excellent. But then it started to become a bit like, you know, it's a virtual world. So what? Doesn't do anything, you know, no one's using it. And then COVID happened. And the amount of people that wrote to me and said, Sue, I need to create a virtual world space. We're going online. Can you do this? And I actually said, well, I can, but I actually have a job, and it's a lot of time to set up. So you got to, if you want to go in there straight away, you find a platform or a resource that's already set up, so you can do it. Now, the one I like, the reason why I like this, but it was back in 2007, is it had people. So my students, when they came in, they were told you had to be a person. You can't be a car, you can't be a dog, you have to be a human, and you had to dress appropriately. No, wild clothing, etc. Think of yourself as a teacher. So anyway, this is one of the spaces that I created, the second space, and I'm going to talk about the first space. So the first space was Education Online, and it was created, and it was a tiny space, and not many people could come there. Like, that's probably about 30 or 40 in that group there, not in that particular one, but in that group that came. And sometimes it was a little bit too crowded. Everything would slow down. And you've got to remember, back in 2007, some people had dial-up modems. So that made it very slow for them. And I actually would tell them, maybe come back next year and do this. Anyway, so round table discussion. So our avatars would come in and we'd sit in a round table and we'd talk about not anything to do with our units, because I had undergrad students and postgrad students all learning how to teach and use resources in the classroom. All their assignments were different. So we weren't going to talk about assignments, but we were going to explore how you could use a virtual world for teaching in a classroom. And so they went on virtual tours and excursions, guest lecturers, like I said. Role plays are excellent in a virtual world, and they went on web quests. So once we got too big, we created Australis for Learning, and this was initially with Curtin University over in Western Australia and Australian Catholic University, which is across all of Australia. And by 2009, they both pulled out. The university wouldn't support them anymore. So UNE now has Australis for Learning. And these are pictures way back in 2007, 8, when it was created, but it hasn't changed a lot. We occasionally put up new builds. So this is some of students that were here for a lesson. This is one of my busiest nights, where most of the night I was getting, help, I can't get in, because our space didn't take enough, it wasn't big enough for all the people that wanted to come in, which was, a good problem to have. Another thing is, back then we spoke via chatting on text, but by about 2011, 10 or 11, audio worked. But most of my students like to use the text, and we had to really teach them the protocols, a bit like Zoom, how to use audio so you weren't talking over the top of each other, and so that you made it work. Anyway, so this is Australis for Learning. It has 7 school classrooms, a library, a science lab, a farm, a ship, a hospital, a shop, a computer shop, and all these play spaces, and they're interactive. You click on them and you get to do some exercise or go. There's a little train in there, so it's a bit of fun. Okay, so from 2008 to 2011, which was when I was gathering my data for my PhD, I took 232 people into the virtual world for training, and there were 3,000 that didn't go in. Now, in this actual graph here was 232 people who chose to come in. So our on-campus people, it was compulsory to come in, but for our online students, it wasn't compulsory because I couldn't guarantee their technology could work. Another thing, so this is comparing their grades from their assignments. And another thing, I did not mark any of these assignments to make sure that there were no biases by me on the results. So you can see on the left graph, the orange and the very deep blue, they're the high distinction and distinctions, and the orange. So on the left is the Second Life virtual world group, and on the right is the non-Second Life group. And you can see that there are a lot more, like 78% of people in the Second Life group got a distinction or a high distinction. Now, I always say I can claim that's because they had me as a teacher, and, hey, but I actually say the people that chose to use a virtual world to learn, it was over and beyond what they needed to do in their classes. And I think that they're the more motivated students, so they got the higher grade. But anyway, it was a great study. So this is some of the activities they did. So up the top left, that's around, you know, instead of sitting around a table, we sat on logs out in a park, and then the middle one is sitting around a table. So the one on the left is a discussion area, but the one in the middle at the top, that was a table, and it was our staff room. Over on the right, the students are learning through play. They were doing a lot of playing, using the interactive tools in the playground. And then the two pictures down the bottom are the two role plays. And we've done a lot of research here, and these were amazing. So the one on the left was a comparison of using de Bono's 6 thinking hats and doing this one in real life, in real classroom, and one in a virtual world. And the one in the classroom, because they're all sitting in tables and doing their little activities using the different hats, they would all listen to other students and you know, steal their ideas, and there was not a lot of innovative thinking there. Whereas in the virtual world, they all went into their little breakout rooms, which you could do in Zoom, and then they did their activity with the 6 thinking hats. And so they found that fantastic. They liked it so much better than the real life classroom. And then on the right, that is a practice teaching area. So there's 5 classrooms that are all look like a classroom, a school classroom, sort of. And this is one of a lecturer from another university teaching school children avatars. And so what we found here, we did develop bots, but they were never very good. But what we did was students were given on and off task role plays to play as the students, and the teacher would come in blind and have a lesson planned and go and teach these students. And so a lot of it was, how do we get our students to get on task, etc. So that worked very, very well. Okay, so part of my PhD, I collected 52,000 lines of text from these chats, and that was another reason why we used the text, so I could collect the data very easily instead of transcribing all the audio. And I should say, looked at all the themes of the chat, and this is the different themes I came up with. So engagement, so the 3 different types, the affective, behaviour and cognitive. Communication, anonymity, they loved. And when I was doing the virtual world classes right up until the end, the students couldn't get their own name, so they had to make up one. And I told them, do not tell anyone what your name is. You can be whatever your avatar is. And they loved that, because they felt they could say what they liked, because no one would know who they were. And I made it a point not to know who the students were. I had to know who they were so I could enroll them. But that was great. Distance was brilliant. I had people far, you know, in the middle of New South Wales, which is very isolated, coming in, and they're just going, this is fantastic. I get to talk to my peers, I get to talk to my lecturer. They did a lot of work together. I would do a 2-hour session with them, but I'd leave my avatar there to record the conversations, because I'd tell them, I'd say, I'm going, but, you know, if you hang around, I'm recording the conversations. This is what I stopped doing. I had to make, they would stay till about midnight, and just because they were so enjoying having this company. And I found that was a bit of a problem, because it was a bit addictive to some of the students. The technology, if it works, it's brilliant. If it doesn't, it is not brilliant. So if it's not working, you just got to get out of it quickly. Technology, yes, that's learning, a great space for learning, because there's so many ways of learning there. You can do the audio, the visual, and even the haptic, using your hands to do things. And there are distractions there, so that was sometimes a problem. Okay, so some quotes from our students. So this guy here, he actually created that little stage behind and then gave it to me, which was brilliant, because that's where I would get them to create something in a virtual world and then tell us about it. And so we used his stage. But this quote is not from him. This quote was from one of my very first students. He was a minister and he was studying his master's in education. And this is what he said. Well, you've probably read it. I had a defining experience last week when I sat down in that open air lecture space and I sat on one side and the rest of you sat on the other side. Suddenly I felt lonely and without thinking got up and moved to where you were all sitting. And then I thought that felt so real. And I've had so many comments like that they actually feel like they're there. I remember taking one of my colleagues to an online or a virtual world lecture, and we were finishing up for the day and she goes, oh, I've got to sit my avatar down. And I said, why? And she said, because I need them to be comfortable when I leave. And I said, you know, when you log off, your avatar's not there. No, I have to have it sitting down when I leave. Anyway, so she did. And every now and then she'd go, oh, my avatar's been standing too long, I've got to sit down. And another one, this dog came up and started talking to me. And I just said to the dog, I said, I'm sorry, I cannot take you seriously as a person because you're a dog. You really need to be in a human avatar. The 6 thinking hats, de bonos, this is someone's quote, one of our students, the opportunity to use 6 thinking hat strategies in a group situation to guide discussion was deeply beneficial. It gave me a clearer understanding of how to use the hats and provided an insight into how it may be used in the classroom. Something up until then had eluded them. So they had done these 6 thinking hats in real life, but they weren't getting how they could use it. And when we did it in a virtual world, they're going, aha. So that was great. And another one, this is when we were comparing online tools with virtual worlds. So this is, again, what a student said. Differences in perception often lay in perceptions of being there as opposed to other online tools. And this student said, I enjoyed using virtual worlds more than online, than discussion boards and chat rooms. And discussion boards and chat rooms are huge and still about today. I like that you can see who's typing, which is them talking, so that you're able to wait your turn to speak. I also like the personal contact with the avatars. The use of a virtual world would also provide motivation, engagement we're all striving to attain with our students. So this is one student that wanted to use it with her future students. So some perceptions of students learning in a virtual world. So we are geographically dispersed adult learners. So virtual activities could be a way to get everyone together in one place without actually going anywhere. We could create scenarios to train staff on how to handle different teaching scenarios, which we did in our virtual classrooms. And then that stopped them feeling so isolated. Distance education felt more real, like they were part of the class in the room. And there could even be several classes interacting at the same time, which there were. We used to have our 5 classrooms all having different teachers teaching about 20 pupils at the same time. Okay, so in 2020, I should say, one of my students from New Zealand got her PhD and graduations were cancelled. So we created one for her, and she interestingly, she's my only student that has studied on a virtual world, being her topic. Anyway, so we created this. Her family came along. Our Provost Chancellor, Academic Innovations, he led the ceremony. It was a lot of the virtual Australian New Zealand Virtuals Working Group members came along. It was just really lovely to have her experience of graduation. And the beauty of her is that she actually got a university medal, so we were able to present her a virtual one here. So that was really nice. So this is the virtual classrooms I was talking about, where you can go in and practice your teaching and through role plays. And these are the classrooms. They look like churches. and they probably were, but they also looked like school classrooms. I manipulated the inside. The top right-hand one was a science classroom. And this was a project that I had with Charles Sturt, Curtin, RMIT, ACU, and University of Hamburg. And so the 6 unis, we did these practice teaching, and we had synchronous and asynchronous teaching. So there were the real students. Then we videoed a lot of assessment and learnings from these classes. There were about 200 YouTube videos that students could go in and look at how they could do certain, conduct a class in trigonometry, now I can't even say the word, and then, or they could just learn classroom management techniques, etc. Machinima is videos in a virtual world. They were created for our students. They would come in and practice their skills before going into the classroom. And I found that was so, so valuable for our on-campus students when they did that, because when they were first started, they would say things that were probably a little bit inappropriate. You wouldn't use them in the classroom, so they had to practice not to do that. It was collaborative. They learned in context, and they could repeat. So pros and cons. So on the left are the pros: collaboration, visual, building, historical reenactments, creations, treasure hunts, learning from a distance. And then on the right, the distractions, the time that they might take because they're immersed, the economic and the training of staff. Okay, and they're just a few images of the different types of activities we undertook. Holodecks were the best, and I wish you could do that in real life. They were click of a button and the scene changed. So, one, you're a library, then click a button, you're a classroom, click a button, you're an outdoor area. They're fantastic. Going on excursions, the Sistine Chapel, NASA, riding bikes. Yeah, there are just so many different things that you could do there in a virtual world. So, but what do we mostly use? We use a learning management system, and this is where we house all our tools for learning. So this is an example of our UNE learning management system, and we use Moodle, but we've called it MyLearn, and it's been developed for us. And this is just an example, learning online at UNE. So getting started, an introduction to MyLearn, recordings, online classroom and meetings, academic integrity, very important, assessments and getting assistance. And then here is another one. We had a project to work out what are the major things you should have on a learning management system, and we created the CSSP, the Commencing Student Success Program, and then all these elements, we created 14 elements that every single unit in our school has to have these elements. So one is one of these. Now, this is where I am going to stop sharing, and now I'm going to share another one. And no, this one. Share. And this one. Hopefully you can hear this.
Teaching at UNE doesn't always look a whole lot like this. In fact, it tends to look a little more like this. This presents us with a unique challenge. How do we connect with our students to increase their engagement in our units? One way to help overcome this challenge is by welcoming students to your unit with an introductory video. To help you get started, we would like to share our top 5 tips for creating a great unit introductory video. Tip 1, start with some information about yourself, such as, I like beagles, or here are my cats. This helps build community and trust and reinforces who you are. Tip 2, explain what the unit is about. Try answering questions such as, how this unit will help your students, and why invest time and energy into the unit. You can even include why you like the unit. Tip 3, think longevity. What can be excluded so your video can be reused in future units? A great example is to leave out reference to dates and things that are likely to change in the near future. Tip 4. Welcome your students to enjoy the unit. You can project your personality and inject humour. And lastly, tip 5. Aim for around 90 seconds. Your final video will likely go for longer, but this is a great goal to aim for. Oh, and if you are filming with the Learning Media team, don't wear green.
Okay, I hope you got to see that and hear that. They were just tips that our people have put together on how to create your little welcome video. So all your courses should have a welcome video. It just makes our students more engaged with their lecturer. Okay, so some practical skills. So this is a biology course. You could organise data into tables. That's using online tools, create graphs, analyse the results, using Excel or Google Sheets, and interpret the findings by using, writing a report on the plant growth, etc. So there's many virtual settings that can help you to use that. Okay, that just flicked back. I'll just go forward again. But our teachers need to learn how to teach online. So they need to learn how to navigate the learning management system. They need to learn how to edit a course, create a course, put it up online. You probably have learning designers that can help you. How to enrol people, your co-teachers, your students, how to create groups. If you're doing quizzes, how would you create message banks, question banks, add questions, take them away. Assignments, how do you set up assignments? How do you grade them? How do you close them? How do you mark them? How do you distribute the marks? They're all things that you have to think about when you're creating a space for your students. They need to learn how to set that up. So online assessment, impact on development of one's learning. So the positive impacts, you get immediate feedback. You can have personalised learning. You can have flexible dates. It's data-driven, and you can have a variety of assignments. It doesn't have to be written anymore. You can have videos. They can submit an audio. They can submit a drawing. They might create something online. So think about different ways of having assessment tasks created. And then on the negative, well, they have to have the skills. There are a lot of academic integrity concerns, and that is getting worse. And when I get to the AI part, overemphasize on standardised teaching, and there could be accessibility challenges. This is positive and negative. Okay, so artificial intelligence. So you either need to decide whether you want to use it or you don't. And if you do use it, you've got to use it cleverly. If you don't, you've got to also make sure that your assessment task can't use AI. And that was AI-generated image. Actually, most of these images are. So AI is getting better all the time. When it first started, became available free for everyone at the beginning of last year, people could pass. AI could pass. Now it can excel. It can actually create really good answers. So you have to be very clever on what you create your assessment tasks for your students. So using AI online in higher education, you can create personal learning paths, very intelligent tutoring. You don't need to use people. They can actually answer the questions our students have very well. It can do automatic grading and feedback. And it can enhance our students' engagement. Chatbots, virtual assistants. Sometimes our students, even us, we don't know whether AI has been used, and we don't know if who we're talking to is real or a chatbot. The analytics behind it all is all really rich and very helps with our curriculum development, administration efficiency. That's excellent. Not as many mistakes can be made. Supporting diverse learners, continually enabling professional development. You have to have your ethical considerations and ensure data privacy. And then there's research and development in that area. So in our schools in Australia, there was a little survey done why teachers were avoiding AI. And some of them said, I haven't explored these tools. This is the main one because I have other priorities. The next one, I don't know how to use these tools. And they are so, once you've seen it, they're so easy to use, it's unbelievable. I'm not sure how to find them, etc. So there's a whole pile of reasons why. But in New South Wales, they've created their own AI in education. In Western Australia, they've put $4.7 million into tackling the teachers' workload using AI. And our federal minister, he said, teaching is the most important job in the world. So good on him, and I agree with him. So they're just a few quotes about we want our teachers to be teaching our kids, not AI, etc. So in March 2023, they predicted 300 million jobs would be lost or degraded due to AI, but 18 months later, that actually isn't the case. The AI hype is ending. No, it's not. Excuse me. It's rapidly improving. It's getting bigger and more accurate to the point where it's quite scary, very scary. So our Department of Education, Australian one, has created a framework for teaching for our classroom teachers to help them use AI and how to use it. And their biggest concern is the privacy and security and safety and well-being of our students. You know, the teaching and learning, you can use that to support, but yeah, mostly our students are not allowed to use AI except for the ones created by the government. So future of online education, it's strong. It's very strong. It is part of our future. It's flexible, offers so many courses. It's accessible, personalised, cost-effective. People can have different dates for their assignments instead of the one due date. You can have blended and hybrid ways of learning. So conclusions and futures of online learning. Well, online learning is here. It's here to stay. In Armidale, we were one of the first to get the best internet in Australia, the NBN bandwidth. And so we were lucky. We got to trial it, and so we've got fantastic internet, but not everyone does. So these are the different types of things that we've already mentioned: immersive technologies, cost-effective, practicing new techniques, etc. Some takeaways. So my thoughts is if someone's an enthusiastic and engaging teacher in face-to-face, they'll probably be a great teacher online. It's not the medium you're using, it's the person that's teaching. If you love teaching, you're passionate about it, you'll probably be an excellent online or face-to-face teacher. Think about the best times if you want to engage with your students synchronously. When are they mostly available? Now, you're not going to suit everyone, but try to find a suitable time for everyone. Use a variety of resources. I've already mentioned that. Text, video, podcasts, something to do, etc. Experiment, reflect, tweak, keep changing, challenge your online teaching. Never, ever have anything the same. You've always got to be thinking about how can you improve. Think of different ways to engage your students. Make sure that you enjoy what you're doing. Challenge yourself and set some goals. And that is me. And thank you for attending. And please, are there any questions? And I will stop sharing so you can ask questions.
Thank you, Prof, for that most enlightening presentation. You've taken us on a journey from Australia to who you are, to online learning, virtual worlds, and then you haven't forgotten learning management systems before highlighting for us the role of AI. So I really appreciate the vastness that you've covered in your presentation. There have been lots of eye-openers for me, in particular with regards to virtual worlds. We do have colleagues who work in or have used virtual worlds in our own discipline, but it's always nice to see a different perspective, especially from an international perspective.
Thank you.
So to our colleagues who are present, does anybody have any questions? Or would you like to engage with Prof? Thanks, Ahmed. You're welcome to unmute your mic and speak to Prof.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. Firstly, I'd like to say a big thank you to Professor Gregory. It was a great presentation. I just had one simple question. How do you view the virtual world model going forward in online education? Do you think that's going to be at the forefront, or is there another way that you think online learning is going another direction, or is virtual worlds the way to go?
Oh, it's not, it's one of the ways to go. So I feel like you need to really have a passion to want to teach in a virtual world, but it is a lot easier nowadays than it was when I started, because there's a lot of virtual worlds set up and created that you can just go in and you don't have to create it yourself. But the thing I really like is that your avatar needs to be a person and look like a person. So when you have, you know, the images that are stick images or whatever, I just don't feel that's quite engaging for our students. No, this virtual worlds are just one thing, and I feel like there's a lot of other ways that you can learn. I think you need to use a variety. I'm currently head of school and therefore I'm not teaching. But when I go back to teaching, so I feel like I'm getting out of the loop of knowing, you know, all about the different virtual worlds, because I used to know it very well. But there's a lot better virtual worlds now than there were then. And they're much easier to use. And I have to say, still, they are immersive. And that little statement, will this keep you enthused, engaged for 6 years, was absolutely spot on. I started my PhD in 2007. So it's almost 20 years later, and I still think they're the best tool. Love them, thought they were so engaging, and it was great for our students and myself using them. So, but I think you have to find a variety of tools that suit you and keep experimenting. It takes a long time to set up online learning in an institution. So COVID, when people were locked down, people going, yeah, I'm an online uni now. And I'm thinking, well, what do you do? What do you offer your students? And they'd tell me, and I go, okay, yes, you are online. That is true, but your students will not like what they learn, how they've been delivered their learning. And many, in Australia, most of the ones that went online do not do online anymore. They did not like it. So, yes. Okay, now there is no way in the world I can pronounce your name. Equatius? Tell me, how bad was I then? You should be able to unmute yourself.
I think it's Iguatius.
Oh, is it? My apologies.
I'm not sure. Iguatius, is that correct? Would you like to
Yes,
talk to us?
yes, I would like to talk. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
Oh, you can hear me now. Actually, I'm Ignatius, so I don't know how my first decided to change my name to Ignatius. But anyway, it's not a subject. Thank you very much, Prof, for such a
Sorry,
wonderful.
we can't hear you very clearly. Is it possible for you to get closer to your mic?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Much better. Thank you.
It's much better. Oh, okay. No, actually, thank you very much, Prof, for such a very interesting workshop. I learned a lot. So my question is just a request. I would like to confirm if we can able to access the recording of this presentation because I joined later.
Hopefully, I can share the slides because I've got lots of links in them. Oh, are we recording? I don't think we are.
Yes, we are recording.
Oh, yes, we
The-
are.
Yes, so the university corporate relations division will do the edits and upload the video, and thereafter we will share it. But this will take time, so please bear with us. As soon as it is made available to all attendees, we will share the link.
Okay, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Please
Prof. Thank you
pronounce
so
your
much
name for us again.
Actually, my name is not Ignatius, it's Ignatius. So our Home Affairs decided to give me another name while I was applying for my
Okay.
So actually, I'm Ignatius, but no, it's not a subject. Thank you so much,
Thank
colleagues.
you. Bye. Nice to meet you.
Thank
Mihalis?
you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Gregory. Fascinating. I have a little concern though, and perhaps you found a way to overcome this. I mean, I heard the merits of this online virtual platform, but I also saw that you said more interaction comes between the students and yourself when it's anonymized and you can't actually see who it is. They've got their avatar in place. And my concern is I'm at a business school, and before we went to this online teaching, and we're still online as a business school for the next 2 years, it appears, since the beginning of COVID to now. So we went from contact to online teaching, and we're still doing online teaching. But my concern is I don't get to know my students as I used to, face to face, their actual character. And also my students don't get to know each other as they used to. And one of the benefits of a business school is the networking, the professional relationships, the personal relationships that will continue into the future. Have you found any, this is the challenge that I face. Maybe you have some tips for me. Thank you.
Look, I cannot deny face-to-face is the best. You get the body language, you get all of that. But if you don't have that option, a virtual world is the second best thing, I think. Now, so the anonymity is great, but most of the time it's not anonymous anymore because we've moved forward so much that our avatars can have our names. So people really do know who they are. The only thing is the one that I used, which was Second Life, you don't look like yourself. But there are some platforms that you can create where you look like, your avatar looks like you. They've come a long, long way in the last 20 years. You use audio just like Zoom, but you really have to set up the protocols. The networking, absolutely you can do that online. You've just got to think about how to do it. Breakout rooms, getting people into smaller groups and then dispersing them, mixing and matching, so they get to know that group, but then they get to know others. You just have to keep working at it, chipping away. But I don't get why someone would make it virtual if you have the option of being face-to-face. If you are all there, why do virtual? I remember when I first looked at this virtual world and they go, well, you can watch a video in the virtual world. And I go, why would I do that? I can watch a video, not in the virtual world, because I'm using up a lot of bandwidth being in a virtual world, and then I'm watching a video. And so, that was to me like, why would you even suggest that? So you just have to think about the best way. And it is trial and error. And if it doesn't work, you just move on and do something else. I hope that helps a bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Labarbalo. And I have to admit I am terrible at pronouncing names, even Australian ones.
Well done,
Hello.
Prof.
With mine, Prof, that was great. Thank you very much. I'm Blue Babalo. I just want to check, Prof, the ethics. Well, at least in the academic world, is use of AI tools ethically accepted? I'm saying the bigger scheme of things, especially in research and things like that. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, is it acceptable? It is not acceptable in research, apparently. I would imagine you have to be very careful with AI because it's so intelligent. Funny that. And developing all the time, that they even tried to stop AI earlier this year, stop it from being available because it was becoming too intelligent. Like I said, it can now answer an assignment and give a really, really good grade, get a good grade. I was part of an experiment last year when some people in our school, they came in and they had some text of a real student had written it, and then the AI had written it. And I used to think I could find the AI. Anyway, so I did it, and then because they queried my decisions, that's when I go, oh, maybe I'm wrong. They never told me whether I was right or wrong. What they did find is that their conclusions, which was published in a Q1 paper, we couldn't tell. We could not tell the difference between a student's text and an AI's text. So ethics, you have to have ethics and cover it. I don't know. I do believe that you can't use AI in ethics, in research, but how does someone know? So it's the big question, and I can't answer that. But I can pronounce rosemary. Hello?
Hi, Prof. Sorry, I just had to put on a mic because I just thought you were trying so hard. Thank you so much for your conversation. And I really enjoyed it because I'm one of those people who also have used Second Life and a couple of other virtual worlds. And one of the challenges that we faced in our institution when we were doing that, and this is around about 2008 through to maybe about 2015, 2016, is just how resource intensive it was. And the challenge is we couldn't even, we had certain port settings that had to be changed. Our IT departments were really stressed because they felt like they were creating vulnerabilities in the network by allowing those access points. And so students were confined to certain venues only, etc. But I do get what you're saying. We were privileged enough that we'd also got grant funding and that we could have a space of our own sort of island that was dedicated. And our students are information systems students. And so we actually wanted them to have the experience of creating a space. So this was at postgrad and actually building and scripting. And one of the things that I think, it was a mental shift for them. And I'm really sad that we can't still offer this, because what we were trying to do to them is say, we reckoned that the thing that they had the most experience of was actually being in a classroom. They'd had at least 15 years of that. So we said, well, you're going to build a space for a 20-minute lecture or teaching opportunity on any topic you like, but you have to do it better than you could do it in real life. So if anything that you do there could be done in real life or the same way in real life, then you're failing, at the brief. And what was amazing is what they actually managed to do. We had students that created an experience of what it would be like to be on Mars or be on Mercury. We had students who created the experience, the simulation of going through a tsunami. So, walking along a beach, seeing an island scene, walking into the ocean, and then seeing the change and how they experienced it. So it was absolutely amazing for them. But, the cost of maintaining the island, we just couldn't sustain, and also the technical aspects. But one of the things that we did manage to do was work with like different students. So our information students were about the application of technology to a specific environment, a real world problem. And we had our students working with students elsewhere in Africa who were computer science students. So they brought different knowledge sets. So to my mind, I agree with you that virtual worlds are amazing. we just practically haven't been able to continue to leverage that. But my one question is, my perception, so it is very personalized, so I don't want to create the wrong sort of institutional perception, but my perception is that our institution is actually struggling with this mix of allowing academics to choose whether modules are online, blended, or offline. And so, you know, we're getting sort of categorical pronouncements as to, you know, whether any specific module should be online or not. And I would appreciate your insights into, you know, how best we can create arguments that perhaps put that agency back in the hand of academics. Thank you.
That is interesting. It should be up to the academics. So we, what we offer on campus is the courses that our students want to do. So if they don't want to do those, well, actually we offer both. So, and this is where we have blended classes. So we have, we might have a real life tutorial, but we have an online tutorial. Sometimes they're online and in the classroom together. But I don't think that, and this is my personal, we have to ensure that our on-campus students get an on-campus experience. And that's what I feel our staff, some of them, they just, you know, maybe for them, it's not easier to have a lecture online, but it means that, you know, you don't have to go and set up your classroom and all of that. So they opt to do that. So for me, with our staff, if we have on-campus students, they have to do something with them face-to-face. They cannot say, oh, sorry, there's only 5 of you, you can go and do online. They have to do something face-to-face. Our students, they pay, well, here in Australia, if someone's an on-campus student, they're usually not because they live there, they've moved here because Armidale's not very big. People come here from, you know, all over Australia, world. So they should not be learning online if they're here. So yeah, our institution, they don't tell us whether we're online or not. We make the decision, and we have to have a sound reason, but we do that right from the start when we create our courses. So we've got an early childhood course that is 100% online. So yeah, that's how we teach it because that's what it is. So and it always has been, but there's an early childhood primary course that is half online and half face-to-face. So if people come to UNE in Armidale to learn that face-to-face, they have to get the face-to-face. Yeah, so yeah, I guess what you were saying, Rosemary, is that sometimes the institution might just think it's cheaper, easier to just offer it online. But not to the detriment of those students that have actually made that commitment to do face-to-face. They deserve the face-to-face.
Yeah, I think just to follow up, if you can indulge me, is I think the reverse. The institution seems to be very concerned about a face-to-face experience for students who are on campus, etc. But I'm not sure that that is considered at like a program level. So it may be a case that a student has, you know, 1 or 2 modules where they are face-to-face and others online. And my experience when I'm on campus is that, you know, it's a bit like vacant halls and empty, and it's almost actually, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, it's almost like the early days of Second Life, where if you went into Second Life and it wasn't a pre-arranged event, you would be walking through these empty halls of nothingness and thinking, I don't know who I'm going to speak to online. But now the physical campus is feeling a bit like that. And so I think it is a challenge. You know, I was just being a bit disruptive by asking for an answer, you know.
I absolutely agree, because our campus is like that at the moment. It won't be tomorrow because it's graduation. We'll have lots of people here. But I think we're in a mid-trimester break, and so yeah, it's very quiet. We do make sure by program that if it's on campus, most of it is offered on campus. One thing that we do have in Australia, if we have an international student, they are only allowed 20% online. They have to have 80% face-to-face. So we are obliged by the government to give them that on-campus experience. And it is sad, empty corridors, very sad. It's just not right.
Agree.
Yeah.
But thank you for your response. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Saw someone come in a little while ago, but he disappeared. Any more questions?
Prof, I do have one.
Mhm.
So you spoke a bit about anonymity in the virtual worlds and how it promotes inclusivity, engagement. It also gives students that space to be more creative and more honest in their communication in the online space.
Mhm.
But how do we actually balance this with mechanisms to ensure accountability and ethical behavior in this virtual space?
Okay, so one thing that I wasn't doing anything with assignments, and I set up the rules before they started, and they had to agree to them. And there was no, because I could kick them out. I had the ability to kick them out. And so I never had to do that. They were very respectful. And I think a lot is to do with the fact that they want to become school teachers. And so they know that there's, a protocol that they have to follow when they're in the classroom, and this was in the classroom. Yes, the anonymity part was more the fact. So if you go into a classroom where you've got 30, 40, 100 people in there, and I'm one of them, there are people who won't say anything. They just sit there and listen and absorb and take it all in and think, oh, I'm glad they asked that question because that was what I wanted to ask and now I know the answer. But in a virtual world, when they were anonymous, when people didn't know them, they would ask. They would actually come out and go. And one person said that they were always shy and wouldn't ask, but in the virtual world they did ask. And another one wanted to become a music teacher, and she found that her students using the virtual world to perform, it overcame performance anxiety because they got used to performing to an audience, and because they're avatars, you don't quite think that they're real people until they start going, yay, that's fantastic, and all that, and they go, oh, wow. So yeah, there are a lot of things like that just help people to overcome those sort of boundaries that they have or fears, really. So, Kerry.
Thanks.
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much, Prof. I really appreciate your presentation, and I've really enjoyed this conversation we've all been having. I'm kind of picking up on threads from you and what a few others have said. And my thinking on this is that we see a lot of discussion in, Mickey mentioned coming from the business school. I come from the school, many of us come from the School of Commerce. And we're seeing these conversations in business about the tension between remote work and working in the office, which really on a larger level matches a lot of the conversation we're having today. And I'll be very honest with you, I'm one of those people who have loved working at home. I love the opportunities that online learning have offered me. I'm just so in this environment and I love so much about it. While absolutely understanding that there are other people who much prefer that in-person engagement. But having said that, do you see this tension, because it sounded like your government and our government have a similar thing going on here, that they're going, students must be on campus. And you see a lot of the remote in the office arguments being like, no, you must be in the office. And to me, it often feels like it comes down to almost an extrovert versus introvert conversation. Because those of, there's so many people who find this space so helpful and so engaging for all of the benefits. And do you think that this is going to be something that moves into other spaces and becomes quite consequential to really the future of work in a wider way? And I think this does pick up a little bit on what Mickey was saying, that in the business school, you kind of have this idea, we're going to work around a boardroom one day, but we've had to, so the COVID years have really forced us to look at other ways. And yeah, I'd just love to hear your thoughts about the future of work in this context.
Well, I'm not the person to ask because my opinions are my opinions. So I am a head of school. I have to be here. My presence is really needed to be here. I feel like if I'm not here, they would go, oh, what's Sue doing? But I absolutely loved the lockdowns. So we had 2 lots of about 6 months, and I really loved them, and I've got so much done. However, what I didn't get done is talking to people. So if I wanted to know something, I would have to organise a Zoom meeting or a telephone. I wouldn't just walk out of this office and go just down the corridor and knock on a door. And that was the stuff I missed. Now, when we came back to campus in about 3 years ago, whenever it was, maybe 3. When we came back, I came back because I felt I had to, as much as I didn't want to. And I had staff come into my office, and so you didn't have to come back straight away, but you had to come back within a period of time. And had people come into my office and go, Sue, I can't handle this. And it'd be day one. I go, yeah, okay, I really understand where you're coming from. And you've probably got into this one, Kerry. And I would say to them, come back to me in 2 weeks' time and we'll have the discussion. None of them ever came back because they got used to being around people again. Because it is, you were saying introvert, extrovert. A lot of people, like my daughter, she has to be around people. She hated the lockdowns. But other people, they're quite happy, being with themselves. But they do need to be with people. So another thing is so we've still got probably 10 of our staff not back, and they all of them at some stage have said, I didn't know about that, or how come I'm not included, or whatever. And so I didn't know about that. So we have monthly school meetings, and I make sure I tell them everything that I feel like they need to know. But if they're not listening, they miss it. And we have morning tea here at 11 a.m. every day. So anyone that's here, we all have conversations, and that's when things happen. And that's what they're missing out on. So I've got one staff member who lives in Melbourne, so that's a fair way away, two plane trips. And so her team, they say, she is fantastic. And I go, that's good. I'm glad, I hired her, so I'm glad she's good. I said, but I don't know her. And they said, but she's really engaged. And I said, yes, she's engaged with your team, your little team, but not the rest of the school. We don't know her at all because she's not here. She does actually come up about twice a year, so we do get to know her, but it's just not the same. That's just my opinion. Again, I loved working from home. I really, really enjoyed that, and I get a lot more done, but I don't get the conversations, and I don't get the the conversations that are nothing to do with work.
Yeah,
they're all good conversations. Yeah,
that's actually, so the big thing you mentioned there that I think is important is the fact that it sounds like your face-to-face time is structured more so than ours. So we don't have that morning tea. So yeah, I think that does kind of speak to that. Well, what are your contact people doing, and paying attention to that? So I think the future of work conversation possibly comes back to that. Does your environment make it worthwhile, basically?
So in our building, 2 schools, our school has a morning tea. And I don't go every day. I just can't. And the other school never does. Our school has full school meetings once a month. Everyone has to come, whether they're online. We do the blended mode. They have had one in the last 4 years. So it's different ways of managing different things. And because we're education, we know we've got to be around people. So it is good for us to keep that. And it's just nice for, our admin staff that, because they have to be here. And yeah. So, yeah, you're welcome. But like I said, my opinions only. It's not, and our government, they go, because we do a 3+2 model, they can stay at home and do their 2 days of research, or however they want to do it. But yeah, so I've got a few, okay. I'm just reading all the comments now.
It's mainly thanks to you for sharing your time, Prof, and your insights. I know it's late there, it's past your normal working hours, so we appreciate you joining us at this part of the evening and sacrificing some of your home time to be with us. I think we're going to end the questions there. It's because it's 11:30 now. You also need to get back to your household duties.
We'll need to go to morning tea together. You
Yes,
will need to
sure.
go to morning tea.
Yes, next time we'll arrange a virtual tea session.
Right.
Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us. I appreciate it, especially in the month of August here in South Africa, we celebrate Women's Month. So it was wonderful to have a female speaker in the area in which I have a lot of passion in, which is the use of technology in education. And we hope that at some stage, if you do ever visit South Africa, that we will be able to host you at UKZN. So we would welcome you. Please do let us know if you are traveling to this end of the world.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Thank
thank
you
you for
sorry. And thank you
Bye-bye.
to all the colleagues who've attended and who've engaged in this session. We will share the recording when it is made available. Thank you again, Prof. We look forward to hosting you at some other time.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.